All right, good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started today. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Jennifer Morse. I'm a product evangelist here at MadCap Software. I want to welcome you all again to this webinar, which is going to be all about introducing MadCap Flare 2017 and, of course, MadCap Central. So hopefully you can all hear me today. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. As always, this webinar will be recorded. So if for whatever reason you have to pop out early, we will be sending you a link to the recording when we're done. We do have 90 minutes scheduled for this webinar. It's a little bit longer than usual because we have a lot to cover today. We may not need all of it, but we have it scheduled just in case. Quick slide here on our agenda, at least what I hope to cover this morning or this afternoon or whatever part of the world you're in at the moment. Also, one more housekeeping item I want to mention. In the GoToWebinar console, there is a questions panel there. So during the webinar, if you have any questions about what you're seeing or need any kind of clarification, or if you can't hear me or see my screen, then certainly we've got an issue there. Please use that questions panel to jot down any questions that you've got. I'm going to do my best to get to as many as I can at the end. Whatever we don't get to, we'll certainly follow up with a question and answer document. Okay, so today's agenda, I'm going to go over a quick overview of the new features in the MadCap Flare 2017 release, which includes dynamic previewing, some variable enhancements, our new clean XHTML target, MadCap Central integration, and more. Then I'm going to segue over and talk about MadCap Central and go over a quick overview there. And we're going to talk about content and project management, content hosting, build automation, task tracking, and lots of other things. And then we'll segue over into the Q&A. So that's kind of a rough agenda for today. I'm going to go ahead and put PowerPoint away for the moment, and I'm going to start right into some of the features in Flare 2017. Oh, the other thing I want to mention, we're going to do something a little bit different today during this webinar. We have two polls that we've developed. So at the end of the Flare section, we're going to ask you to give us your votes on your most favorite feature of Flare 2017. You know, with every release that we come out with, we always sort of internally talk about our favorite things. So we thought we'd turn it over to all of you. We'd love to get your feedback on what features you find most, what feature you find most helpful and what's your favorite. So we'll do two polls. We're going to do a poll on Flare, and then at the end of the Central portion, we'll ask you to give a vote on your favorite Central feature as well. And I'll let you know when those are coming up. All right, so starting with Flare. Again, I want to point out the name change. If any of you joined me for the last release webinar that we had for MadCap Flare 2016 R2, I mentioned this, but I just want to point this out again for those that are not familiar. You'll notice the name change up here to MadCap Flare 2017. Reminder, we're going to be having way more releases throughout the year. So we're moving more to an agile release cycle. So all of these releases that we have throughout the year are going to include lots of features and fixes. So rather than save them all up for one major release per year, what we're going to do is make new releases available throughout the year so that users can start taking advantage of the new features that we come out with more quickly. And it's also nice, you know, these are chunks of new features that you can learn and digest. It's not such a long list of things to learn. Sometimes when you have, so many new features that get added to the tool, it sometimes feels like you're learning a whole new tool. So we're going to make them available to users with way more frequent releases throughout the year. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is the new dynamic preview window pane. And again, this is, those little things that we talk about internally about favorite features. This happens to be my favorite one. So the preview function in Flare is really, really handy, and it's always been available. But what it does is it gives us a really quick peek at how our topic looks for any of our targets. And the whole point of it is that we don't have to compile the whole project in order to see certain stylistic properties, how they look in the topic, or what does my topic look like in my PDF target with my page layout brought in, or with my conditions applied. We can give a quick peek. So we've always been able to preview our topics here. And if we wanted to preview any of our topics, we just go ahead and choose the target that we'd want to check this target out in and see how it looks. So and again, previous versions, you could always launch this preview button. This still works the same. But now when we launch the preview window, it's actually dynamic. So we can keep this preview window open while we continue to work in Flare, and then we can see the changes live in our preview. So I'll go ahead and move him over a little bit. So if, for example, I take a peek at this and I decide I need to make, some changes to this topic, right now I'm previewing it in my HTML5 target, so it's pulling in those some of the styles and some of the settings that I've put into that target here. But if I decide I want to come in here and edit, I don't have to close my window down in order to get to my topic. I can come in here and I can start typing all of my new content that I want to add. And when I click Save, this preview window is going to actually dynamically update, and it's going to show me all of my new content. And what's equally as fun is if you've got a multi-monitor setup, maybe you've got 2, maybe 3 monitors going, you can drag this guy over. He doesn't have to stay here on top of your topic. You could actually drag him over to another monitor if you want. Or what's kind of fun is we can dock it now and have it live on the right-hand side. So now while I have this open, I can continue to make my changes, and it'll dynamically update, and it stays there. I don't have to close the window down. Want to go over this preview pane. There's a few new fields going on here. If we look over here in this preview pane, the ability to apply condition expression, that's always been there in the preview button. When you launch it in previous versions, the conditional expression window's there, and you can pick and choose any additional conditions you want to see how it's going to look. But there's 2 new things going on. We've got this file section, and we've got a target here. So the file lets us choose to preview any other topic or snippet or master page in the project. Again, we don't need to open that file up in the XML editor first in order to invoke the preview. So for example, maybe I want to, with this topic open, I can choose this little ellipsis box here, and I can browse to any of my topics, any of my snippets, or my master pages, and go ahead and preview them. So I'll go ahead and grab one to preview. And he'll open up there on the right-hand side. The target field, let me go back to my topic here. The target field lets us choose any target we've got in our project so that we can preview how that topic is going to look with those target settings. And when we do, the preview is going to change accordingly, so we can see things like the conditions we've got set or the page layout that we want to bring in. So again, right now I'm previewing this topic with my HTML5 target, but I can toggle to any of the other targets in my project. So if I want to see how this looks in PDF, for example, I can, and I'll go ahead and make him a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. Maybe down a little bit here. So now we can preview this topic with my PDF target. This can be really handy, and I encourage you all to use this preview window when you're working, because it's really easy to spot things that maybe you need to address. Like right now I'm looking at this really long topic, and in PDF like right now I notice a quick something that maybe I want to fix. I've got a figure caption that breaks. So when you're doing online and print, sometimes you don't know where things are going to break, and depending on how you like to present things, maybe you want images and figures to stick together. So this preview is nice because now we can quick take action. Perhaps we need to come in here and stick these guys together. I can group them and use this little grouping function, which has always been in Flare. I just happen to think it's really fun and easy and cool. So when I click this guy, I can wrap these 2 elements together in a div. So I already did that. I created a div, and I created a no break setting, which essentially sticks these 2 guys together, and nothing's going to break them apart. So when I click OK and I click Save, again, my preview is going to update, and now I can see that stylistic change took effect, and my image and my caption is together. So a really handy thing to do. Saves a lot of time. I can also make changes to my style sheet in general with this open. So if we go back to HTML, for example, maybe we decide we need to make some changes to what this looks like. I can bring up my style sheet, and I'll go ahead and select him here. I want to edit this H1, for example. And the easiest way for me is just to right-click on the element and bring up that style sheet. Create a little bit extra real estate for us so we can see what's going on. Maybe I want to change this font. I don't want it to be green anymore. We'll go ahead and give it this pretty purple color. And again, with my preview open, I can go ahead and refresh this, and everything will update for me. I don't have to close that thing down and make my changes and then reload it. If you don't like it docked here, again, if you've got that multi-monitor setup, if it takes up too much space, drag it over. It's up to you. Okay, so to create some extra real estate, though, as much as I love him docked, I'm going to go ahead and put him away. All right, so the ability to convert equations in Word to MathML. So in previous versions of Flare, if you imported a Word doc that contained equations, the equations came over, but they came over as images, so you couldn't edit them at that point. Now when we bring Word docs over that have equations, we can convert them from the Office Math Markup Language, which is the format used in Microsoft Word, to MathML, which is a web-based standard and a Flare standard format. So we can do that quickly. So I want to bring in a Word doc, let's say, into my project. Now again, you can start a brand new Flare project from a Word document, or if you've got Word docs you want to bring into an existing project, you can do that too. So I'll go ahead and import him in. So I'm going to start that Microsoft Word import wizard, and I'm going to browse to the equation that I want to bring in. I'll click this little green guy here, and I'm going to go ahead and point to a Word doc that has a formula in it. And when you click Next, of course, Flare is going to do a deep scan of that Word document like it always does to try and leverage as much as it can. Let me go back here. Here we go. And you get this option, which is Convert Equations to MathML. So if you want them to be editable, make sure you check off this box in the Word import wizard, because that's going to change it to something that you can edit in the editor. So I'll go ahead and click Finish. And we'll bring him in and take a look. And we'll give it a second. GoToMeeting tends to slow me down here. Okay, so let's click Accept. And we'll take a look at what we brought in. So your favorite and mine, the good old-fashioned quadratic formula, there he is. So he's not an image anymore. This is actually an equation that I can edit if I want to. So I can right-click on this element here, and Flare gives me the option to edit the equation now. So again, before they were just images, uneditable. Now they come in as MathML, and then you can continue to edit them as you please. All right, so moving on. So the next thing I want to talk about is the ability to add a condition tag or a file tag when adding a file to your Flare project. So when you import a file into your Flare project, and again, that would be bringing in here, actually create a new file and bring it in. So any one of these file types here, when you bring it in, you're going to have the opportunity to add a condition or a file tag at the time of import. So let's go ahead and add a topic to our project, and I'll show you this new dialog. So sometimes, depending on what it looks like, you know, everybody's a little bit different, there's this new attribute section here. And if it's not exposed, you just click this little button and he'll show up. So with every file you bring in, you're going to see this new area down here at the bottom. This lets you apply a condition tag or a file tag if you use those to the file right at import. So this saves you a lot of time. You don't have to first bring it in and then apply the condition or the file tag to the file. You can do it right when you bring it in. So I'll go ahead and create this topic. I got a topic here for my endnotes. We'll call it endnotes, and I'll go ahead and apply a condition tag. Maybe give it that print only tag and click add. And when we bring him in, we can see that that condition's already applied. So again, save some clicks. We don't have to first bring in the file or the topic or whatever we're bringing in. We can apply that condition or that file tag right at that moment and save ourselves a little time. Okay, so some variable enhancements I want to talk about. We go back to a topic here. Come down here to the bottom. So variable pinning. So now we can pin our favorite variables, making them really easy and quickly accessible to use for the future. And we can use them and we can drag them in any way we want. So we can insert a variable lots of different ways. We can do it from the right-click menu and hit Insert and go to our variable list. If you've got your variable list open, it's really easy to just click the one you want and drag it over, for example. So you can insert variables lots of different ways. Whatever method you choose, as soon as you insert that variable, it now becomes available in our recently used, oops, I got a sticky mouse here. I got all my variables that I've recently used are going to show up here in this recent used variables list. Now, sometimes as your projects evolve and time passes, your variable library can become quite large. There may be some variables that you use over and over again. So it may be handy if there are certain variables that you use often, you can go ahead and pin it. So no matter how many variables you insert, if there are ones that you access a lot and you just want a quick way to grab them without having to go through a long list of variables, maybe you've got variables stored in lots of different folders in here, however you've decided to design it. The ones that you use often can be pinned for easy access. And if you don't want it anymore, you can just click this unpin guy and get rid of it. And maybe replace it with another variable that you use often. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about in terms of variables is the ability to now link TOC entries with system variables. And this is actually a really fun feature that we added. In fact, it's one that a lot of folks have requested, which is now the ability to sync our TOC entries or our TOC labels with our topic title. And what does this mean to you? Well, in previous versions of Flare, you would need to manually change the labels for a table of contents entry when you edited the title of its linked topic. So if you forgot to make a change to the TOC entry, you would end up with topic titles that were inconsistent with your label. So let's talk about that and kind of give you a visual here. I'm going to open up a table of contents file. I don't have any topics in there, but let's go ahead and create it. When we are building our table of contents, so we go ahead and we're going to start by dragging a topic over. Let me click Save. A couple things you're going to notice. The first thing you're going to notice is that we've got this this blue text here. This doesn't mean that it's going to show up blue in our output. It means that we've got a system variable called that's linked to it. And in this instance, if we look at the properties of it, it's called linked title. So additional topics that we add to our table of contents will have that same linking. So maybe I drag this guy over, and we'll see too that he's also blue. So he's also got that system linked variable. So what this means is if we make a change to this topic, so right now it's linking to this file here, this topic. If we come up here and we decide to call this maybe, I don't know, we'll say what's new in this version, and I click Save, when we come back to our table of contents and we refresh it, we'll see that this is now updated. So you don't have to manually refresh it. I'm just doing that for the purposes of the demo. But when you build and compile, it will automatically self-heal. But the point is that I didn't have to manually make that change. So that can save a lot of time. This feature works for any new TOCs you created in this new version of Flare. If you're bringing in a project into Flare 2017 that was maybe created in an older version, you won't see this blue linking. But all you have to do is select all of your items in your table of contents. You can do a control multi-select. You can bring up the properties of the table of contents entries, and all you have to do is select the variable right here in this list. So we'll come to our system variables, and there's that system variable that we want to link all of our entries to. So if you're bringing in a new one and you don't see that blue linking, or bringing in an old project, excuse me, and you don't see that blue linking, all you have to do is select your table of contents and apply that system link variable to all of them in one fell swoop. So one thing to note about this is that this is actually cascading. So if we are linking to a topic, let's say, and for whatever reason you don't have a topic title, which is actually optional. If I look at the properties of this topic, we'll see, if I right-click and look at it, I actually don't have a topic title here. So there's this cascading effect with this variable linking. If it doesn't find a topic title in the file or in the topic, it's going to go ahead and display the very first heading that it sees. If it doesn't have a heading 1, for example, it would display heading 2. And if you use that system link variable and you don't have a heading in your topic at all, which would be rare, but maybe that's the case, it's actually going to default and show the file name. So again, it's got this cascading effect. You can actually force this TOC label to not use the title, but if you want, you can choose to link it directly to, let me show you this variable list again. You can link it to the heading of the topic. You can link it directly to the file. But by default, it uses that link title, and with this cascading effect, it makes it pretty easy. So you can always accept the default when you're creating a new TOC and just use this one here. So that's up to you. And of course, if you don't want to do this syncing, you can manually, change this and just type in the label that you want to use. So if you want to do it the old way and manually keep it up to date, that's certainly an option as well. If that's the case, you won't get this blue text here. It'll actually just be black, which lets you know, oh, it's not linked. I have to manually update it. All right, so want to transition a little bit over into outputs now. So another new feature that we added in this version is a brand new target in Flare called the Clean XHTML target. So for those who are newer to Flare, let me switch over to my project organizer. A target in Flare is like a recipe that tells Flare how to process our raw source files and make unique outputs of our files. So you may have target files that make PDFs, responsive HTML5 sites, Windows help files. So those are all targets are. So in this version, we added a new recipe or a new target file called clean XHTML, and I went ahead and added them here. If you want to add a new target, it's very easy to do. You just simply right-click on the folder, add a target. You can tell Flare, well, what type of target are we going to make? HTML5, PDF, Word, and there's that new clean XHTML one. So I already did it to save a little bit of time. So why would you consider this output? Well, it allows you to repurpose your output in lots of flexible ways. So for example, maybe you need to create some single source content that lives outside of the Flare ecosystem. Maybe some content that doesn't need to be wrapped around a branded top navigation responsive skin, for example. This lets us do this. So we can, maybe you need to single source some output. Maybe you need to embed those output files into some other application, like another project management tool or a wiki or some other CMS tool or maybe an e-learning system. It's simply a way to have a clean standard to work with if you need to port your content into some other platform without giving up all of that single source authoring and multi-channel publishing power of Flare. So again, something perhaps outside of that Flare wrapper, and you need to take it and port it somewhere else. This is a good option for you. So I'll go ahead and do a build here. So let me open up my, and I just want to show you and kind of compare what's going on. So let me give it a table of contents to use, and let me click Save. So let me click off a build. Now, just for comparison purposes, we'll do the same thing, but we're going to compare a file that's built using HTML5, like perhaps with a skin wrapper around it, and then without it, just so that you can see. Let me make sure this guy has got a table of contents, and we'll build. Okay, so this guy's done. So let's take a look. So here's my clean XHTML target that I just built. I want to open up the output folder just so you can see. So first of all, not a lot going on. If we open up the content, let's go ahead and take a look at this EndNote topic that was built. And we're going to go ahead and look at it with in the text editor so we can see what's going on. So a couple things to keep in mind. This new target produces HTML files that are free of all the MadCap specific tags, so they're not dependent on any other MadCap generated files. So no skin file controls, no JavaScript, doesn't include any skins, search components, navigation, or any extra features. It's simply your single source output. So the MadCap namespace is removed, those MadCap specific tags are removed, all the JavaScript is removed. We also told the target, let me go back here because I skipped over this. If we go back to the clean XHTML target, there's an option here for styles, which is take all the style sheet information, which is usually linked, and make them in line to the file. So depending on the system that you're porting to, depending on that application or that program, they may ingest content a little bit differently. So this may be an option to explore. If for whatever reason it wants those styles in line versus having a linked style sheet, you can click this check mark box, and if we go back here, we can see that all of the style sheet information is now in line in the file. So if we look at the same thing, let's just go ahead and move him over. Let's just do a quick compare. We'll open the output folder of that same one built using the, let's open it with Notepad and we'll take a look. So this is the same file. Let me move him over. We can look at it side by side. And you can see there's a lot more going on. So this is better, of course, when we're wrapping it in the HTML5 skin, this makes a lot more sense. But again, this is much cleaner. All of that MadCap and all of the JavaScript stuff is removed, so it'll make it much easier for other systems to ingest. All right, so next I want to talk about how Flare 2017 integrates with MadCap Central and segue into some of those features and benefits of our new tool. But I want to shift to PowerPoint one more time for just a moment, and I also want to bring up the poll. So we talked about lots of new features here, and at this time I would love to get your feedback and get your vote on what your favorite new feature is. So maybe we can bring that poll up real quick. Hopefully you all can see that. So we talked about the dynamic preview, convert word equations to MathML, the ability to add conditions and file tags when adding a file, automatically linking TOC entries to those system variables, and then we also talked about that new clean XHTML target. So hopefully that poll is up, and so if you want to give a quick vote as to what your favorite feature is, it'd be great to see what you all think. I think what I'm going to do is while that's open, I'm going to switch over to PowerPoint here. Okay, so a couple more seconds. We'll keep that poll open, and we'll move on. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. I want to segue over into MadCap Central here, and I'm just bringing up PowerPoint just for a moment to talk about a few things, just to kind of give you some context. So what is MadCap Central? MadCap Central is a cloud-based platform that lets you plan, track, and manage certain processes, content, and teams that are really at the heart of your organization and responsible for producing documentation. And the other big thing is, why did we build it? So just a little bit of context. So for years, users have been telling us and have been letting us know about problems they've been running into with their documentation, workflow challenges, technological challenges, and things like this. And we know that not all of these problems are things that Flare can solve on its own. So for example, if you're a Flare user, it's really simple to build your outputs. We just did it really quick there. You know, you click a button that says build, and it churns and does its thing, and now you have your outputs file. But then what? We need to get our beautiful HTML5 site online, or our PDFs available to our customers. And a lot of users find that process a bit scary. They may not have resources internally to get a staging server or a web server set up quickly. Maybe you need a source control tool solution, or perhaps a much better source control tool solution than what you have. Maybe you don't like what you're using. And the thought of getting help from an IT team, or getting money to switch, is really daunting. So another thing we hear a lot is there may be an instance where you do publish output for Flare and you get it on a production server. Maybe you spot a really big problem with your output. Maybe some content snuck in there that really shouldn't be. Maybe you spot some grammatical issues or some spelling issues that were missed. So depending on your internal process, it can sometimes be a bit of a pain to go back, rebuild, and go through all of the different publishing steps to get those things fixed. Another thing that we hear often is that it can be challenging to keep track of all of the things that need to be done to get all of the documentation completed. Keep track of who needs to do what, all the tasks involved to go from A to B. We've seen people create really extensive spreadsheets, many different apps to kind of keep everybody together. So we really kind of came together and asked the question, how can we help manage workflows better for people? So of course the list goes on and on and on. And I want to say that, and I want to I'll maybe drive this point home a couple times, but this first release of Central, we know it doesn't solve every issue for everybody's problem to the nth degree yet. The features that we talk about today are really just the start. So we're in the process of building our yellow brick road, as a cheesy example. It's not done yet, but we've laid those foundational bricks. And again, we realize it doesn't solve every single problem, but it does solve a lot of problems for a lot of people. So we're going to talk about some of those features. All right, so I'm going to put PowerPoint away again. Let me come back to Flare. And I'll clean my view up here. Let me get rid of this and we'll create some extra real estate. Okay, so while MadCap Central is especially ideal for MadCap Flare users, even non-Flare users are going to be able to take advantage of MadCap Central as well. And we're going to touch on that a little bit later when we walk through it. But I first want to start from the point of view from the Flare author, which is, okay, where do we begin in terms of using Flare with Central? Well, and if you're in the latest version of MadCap Flare, when you come up to this view ribbon, you're going to get a new button here called MadCap Central. And when we click this button, we're going to get this window come up here. Let me create a little bit more room. Now, when we invoke this central plane from Flare, what we're going to do is establish a connection to Central so that we can take this local Flare project. For example, we'll take this guy that's local here to my machine, and we're going to upload it to MadCap Central, creating a copy of it in the cloud. Now, since Central is a web-based platform that you need to subscribe to, you'll need to be able to log into Central from a browser first before you can log into it from Flare. So in other words, you have to be an authenticated user within your Central license before you can connect to it from this pane. Now, you can be invited to log into Central from the person who initially subscribed to Central from our website, and you'll receive an onboarding email. We'll let you log in from a browser and create a username and password to access your Central license here. Alternatively, if you're the one who actually signed up for the Central subscription on our website, then you'll be able to create a username and password from that onboarding email that you receive, and then subsequently invite other team members into Central. So once you've created your username and password, then you can use that same information to log into Central right here. So I've already done that. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my username, which is generally your email, and put in my password, and we'll go ahead and we'll click login. So there I'm in. So again, establishing this connection between our local Flare project and Central is just one aspect of it. But again, why would we want to do this? Like, gosh, it seems like an extra step. Well, for one, when we establish this connection, we can now take advantage of Central as an integrated source control tool. Again, I mentioned you may not have a source control tool workflow in place. Maybe you want one, and the thought of getting one set up seems daunting. You don't have an IT resource or a team to get you set up with doing that. Maybe you don't like the one you have. Maybe you're a lone writer and you think, well, I've never used source control. I don't need to. I'm only one person. You think I'm good. But even if you're a team of one, source control can be a really beneficial thing to have. Maybe something catastrophic happens to your hard drive. You know, something really bad happens to your machine. You could lose everything. If you're bound to source control, you have a really quick way to recover all of those golden source files that you've spent so much time creating. And if you're part of a team, then source control is vital. Not only for those backup reasons, but when multiple authors are writing to the same project, having source control is a great way to ensure that all of your topics are in sync. And I don't have time to go into all the benefits of source control today, but it's a really great thing to have. All right, so getting our project into Central is really easy, of course, for us here, and we're going to go ahead and do that. But when it's up on Central, other players on our team can get involved as well. So these can be other Flare authors who need to work on our project that we've uploaded, or maybe non-Flare users who are part of the overall documentation process who need to log into Central and help you manage and QA your builds. Another reason why we would want to sync it up there is maybe we need an easy way to make our content available to our end users without having to work with IT to get a production server, a staging server set up to host and serve up all of your finished output files. We can use Central for hosting as well. So once we're logged in, we can see a few more buttons that become available to us, so we're going to go through these here quickly. So the first big one is this guy here, which is upload this project to MadCap Central. So this is take this local copy and let's clone it up in the cloud. So when you click this bind project window will come up. Your MadCap Central license will actually show up here in this list. By default, it'll take the project name, whatever you called this project, which is Webinar 10, and optionally, you can create a description if you'd like. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And what it's going to do, like I said, it's going to take a local copy of this project here, and it's going to make a clone of it up in the cloud. And the bind project window will go, and see we have a bind successful here. So we'll click OK. And on the left-hand side, we get a little bit more information, again, letting us know that it's successfully bound to Central. So now we've got it up in the cloud, and you'll notice too that we've got this new source control ribbon that shows up. So now we can continue to work in our project like we normally would, and when we're done, we can push all of our changes up into Central like an integrated source control tool. Very easy to do. Central's not replacing Flare as your authoring tool, but now we can interact with it as our primary source control tool if we want. So when we're making changes to our topic here, when we save at the end of the day, perhaps we'll do a push, and it'll take all of that changes, all those changes that we made, and push them up to the Central as our source control tool, and everybody else that's part of this project will be able to pull all of my changes down and continue to work on it. All right. So the other button I want to go through here is remove MadCap Central bindings from the project. So if you no longer need your project bound to Central for whatever reason, you can remove its binding. So removing the binding from a project doesn't necessarily remove it from Central. It simply removes the link between Central as our repository and the project. It's still available locally, but you'll no longer be able to upload or push changes from our local project up to the Central repository. This guy here, this is import a project from MadCap Central. This is where you can access other projects bound to your Central license. or perhaps pull down a project that you haven't yet worked on that maybe somebody else has uploaded. So when we click this guy, we'll get a little message that comes up, and again, you'll choose the license, which generally should be one. And there's an option here. All of the projects that are bound to your central license that you're a part of, where you have permissions to actually pull them down, will be available here. So as an author, I can choose any one of these projects and pull the most recent copy down to my local machine so that I can start working with it in Flare. And last but not least, this guy here is open the MadCap Central portal. So if you need to get into the portal for whatever reason, if you don't have it open, this is just a quick way to do it. Now, I've already got that open, so I'm going to switch over here. When you first log into Central, so when you click that little login, launch MadCap Central button from Flare, this is the first thing you're going to see, is this home dashboard. It's initially going to be empty. So when Central users log in, you can actually customize your own dashboard with widgets that you find helpful. And widgets are little information objects, and they give us quick bits of information at a glance. So when we come up here to select widgets, there's a number of widgets from which to choose. And this is where we can populate our home dashboard with these little information objects that we find helpful. So everybody's is going to be a little bit different. I'm actually going to leave this blank. I'm going to come back to the screen at the end because we want to do a little bit of work in Central first, a little bit of housekeeping to make better use of this area. Let me click cancel here. So what I'm going to start by doing is going through the features and some of the benefits of the functional areas that we see here on the left-hand side of the screen. So we're going to talk about users and permissions. So how do we get people into our Central license, and how do we give them permissions to do or not do various things. Teams, we're going to walk through how we can organize our users into teams if we want to. We'll look at how tasks can help us manage workflows and processes. We'll take a look at projects and builds, see our uploaded Flare projects, associate users with them, and do some fun things in terms of building and hosting output. And then finally, we'll make our way back home and talk a little bit more about widgets and how they can be useful. So let's start first with users and permission. So if you want other team members to log into Central, click this guy down here and go to this page, they'll need to be a user in Central. So again, if you're the person who initially subscribed, this is where you can invite your colleagues to join in. So at first, this page is going to be blank. You'll only see your name up here. So that's exactly what you'll see. Now, I happen to have some users already added here. And you'll also notice that I actually have user admin next to my name because I'm the one who signed up for this license. And because of that, I can actually add additional users to it. So let's go ahead and do that. All you have to do is click this plus button. And we can add the first and last name of the person who needs to join. So let's say I want to add a team member. And I'll put in this. And before we send the invitation and send that onboarding email, we can set the permissions for this user. And by clicking this little guy here, we can actually expose that information. So we can decide, well, what kinds of things can we let Julia do? Maybe Julia is a junior writer on our team who's new. Maybe we don't want to give her all of the various administrative rights, the ability to purchase and get into server management and manage teams and projects. Maybe we want to just give her the ability to work with Flare and Central, which is upload new projects to the license and of course push and pull from the Central repository to her local copy of Flare. And then we can decide, we don't even want her to be able to run and schedule builds. We just want her to be able to view or perhaps download them as possible. So we can control what users can and can't do once they're invited in. I can also bulk add users. So let me go ahead and send that invitation off to Julia. And what happens is we'll see a new line added to our users list here. Let me click finish so it's not so gray. I'll bring that back up. So there's Julia. She received an onboarding email. We can see that she's invited. She's not online yet. But if we go back to this screen, that was the ability to add one user. We also have the option to bulk invite users if we want. And this can be handy if you need to bring in a bunch of users in one fell swoop. Perhaps they've all got the same permissions as well. So you can hit bulk invite, and all you have to do is browse to a CSV file. So we'll click this button. I actually have one here. And when we bring it in, what we can do is we can set the permissions for all these people at one time. So again, handy if everybody's got the same permissions that you're bringing in. You don't have to do it one by one. Now, even if you bring them in a bulk like this, you can still go into individual people and change their permissions if you want. So I'll go ahead and click cancel there. And just so that if you want to see what that looks like, let me go ahead and show you. I should have had that open. I apologize. I meant to do that. I want to show you what this CSV looks like because it's pretty basic. Bring him over here. So the CSV file, you can all see my screen. It's basically 3 columns. We've got the email address of the person that you want to bring in, their first name, and their last name. So this is just Excel. I entered it all in. I saved it as a CSV. And now when I do that bulk invite, I point to that file, and all of these guys will come in automatically. You'll see them all listed in the users page once I hit invite. So that's how easy it is to create a CSV file and do a bulk invite. So since they're not real people, Peanuts characters, we're not going to bring them in. But that's how easy it is to do it. Okay, so a couple other things I want to mention. When you hover over everybody's card, there's a little bit of information that you're going to see. So when we hover over a person, we can send them a quick message if we want. We can assign them a task. Oops, I've got a little bit of a weird mouse here. We can also change the permissions that we initially set for that person. So if Julia does a great job and we want to give her a few more things to be able to do, we can always come in here and edit and manage the things that we want. Our documentation has a lot of information about each one of these things and what they all do, so I won't have time to go through them all. But we even give you little tool tips here to kind of tell you, well, what does this permission mean if I were to grant somebody that particular permission? So it takes some time to kind of read through those, but it does let you control what people can and can't do. Your own name, just to draw your attention up here to the upper right-hand side of the screen, you'll see your own name up here on the top, and when we click it, another thing you want to take a look at are the settings for yourself. So this will allow you to round out your profile if you want to, in terms of what people see about you. Notifications tab, this is also a good one. This lets you control when you receive notifications when any of these things happen in your central license. So everybody's going to have different preferences here. So these check mark boxes, everything that I've got checked, anytime one of these things happens in Central, I'm going to be notified. So we can be notified 2 different ways. You can choose to be notified in the notification center of Central. So if you're logged in, you'll get a little, it's grayed out now since I don't have focus on it, but there's this little bell up here on the right-hand side. And anytime one of these things happens, you'll get a notification. You can also choose to receive an email when any of these things happen, or you can choose to receive both. It's totally up to you. So that's something you'll want to go in and do, because everybody's going to have a little bit of different idea in terms of what's important to them. Okay, teams, let's kind of move on here. So the teams page can be used to organize users that are part of our central license into groups. So it's a real convenient way to associate various people with projects and also quickly communicate with a specific set of users. So here we can see, this will be blank initially. I already created a team here. And like users, I can hover over this and I get a little bit of information. I can see, who's on the team and what projects are associated with this team. If I want to, I can send a quick message to the team if I want to. Why would we do this? Well, maybe you're the QA or the team lead and you want to let everybody on the team know that, push your changes for this particular project and I'm going to do a build. Maybe these are distributed folks. You don't have an email distribution list that's quick and you just want to get a quick message out to everyone. So maybe I can say something like, hi guys, do a push. I'm going to build. So whatever it is you want to say, and we'll click reply. And that's going to go out to everybody. They'll be notified. If they're in Central, it's just going to pop up in the message center here. So this little envelope will show up. Or they'll receive an email that I've sent a message. And when they're done letting you know that everything's checked in, then you can go ahead and go about your business. So that's one easy way to use that message center with Teams. So again, let me go back here. So since I have user permissions, I've already got one here, but it's really easy to add a team as well. Just like adding a users, I can click this little plus button. I can create a new team. I can call it the B team. Put a little comment about it. I can associate various projects with it if I want to. So here I'll put a project with this team. Maybe I'll assign some users to it and click Save and Finish. So again, very flexible. We wanted to make this flexible enough to handle lots of different company sizes. If I'm part of a really small writing team, I may only have one team here if that's even useful and have all of my users associated with that particular team. But if you're part of a much larger team, let's say, with users distributed across lots of different functional areas, Well, you may have a much longer list of users or of teams here with different users grouped together, all working on different projects. And if you do end up with lots of teams in your list, there may be lots of distributed people all over. If your list is getting really long, you can actually toggle between all of the teams that are part of the central license, or if you select My Teams, now I'm part of both, so that didn't really make a lot of sense, but this would actually change and only show you the teams that you're part of. So again, if you're not part of them all, that list will shrink a little bit and just show you the teams that you're associated with. All right, so tasks. When we click the tasks icon here on the left, this task page opens. So, and it lets users in Central keep track of all the work that needs to be done or completed, and also visualize the workflow. So very similar to a Kanban board, it lets us see tasks in 3 states. So things that are in to-do, tasks that are in progress, and also tasks that are completed. Very easy to create a new task, just like creating a new user or a team. Click this little plus button. And so I'll create a task here. Let's see, review my skin on KB. So you can type with everybody watching. Maybe add a little description about this task. I'll go ahead and select a project that this task is associated with. I'll associate it with my knowledge base project. I can also choose a start date and an end date. So maybe I want this to start today. Maybe I want the review to also end today. And maybe I'll just give it 2 hours. I can assign it to either myself or, oops, it wants me to do, let's see. I can assign it to myself, or I can assign it to anybody else that's a user in my license. So maybe I'll go ahead and assign this to Justin. I'll click Save and Finish. Now he's going to get a notification either by email or in that little notification center that he's got a new task, and it'll let him go right into that task and see all the details about it. We can put attachments onto the task. So maybe there's meeting notes or images or Word docs or some kind of file that's related to this particular task. We can go ahead and attach that document here so that the person you're assigning it to has all of the information that they need. So when we create that task, it'll go ahead and refresh, and it's going to show up on our task board here. And here it is. Really easy to move tasks around. So, let me take a step back for a minute. As this continues to grow and evolve, you may find that you see a lot of tasks showing up on this task board because you're going to see everybody's. One thing that's helpful to do is if you just want to hone in and focus on your own tasks, again, you can click this guy and just toggle to the tasks that you need to focus on. So this is helpful for users. So if I'm looking at some of the tasks assigned to me, as things move through their life cycle, I can click any one of them and I can drag them into any column I want. And we can continue to move them through the process from to-do, in progress once we get started on the task and do what we need to do, and also then complete. Tasks can also have a dialogue going on. So and all of these dialogues are saved. So, Justin assigned this to me. I can add a comment, and we can start a dialogue that goes back and forth as this task moves through its life cycle. There's another view to the task board, which is the calendar view. So this is an alternate view or a way to see tasks more in a calendarized fashion. So that may be helpful for some of you. So we've got a lot going on here because we've got a lot of tasks. We'll create some extra real estate. Again, if you prefer to look at things more in a chronological way, so if you're setting a lot of tasks, it's nice to see how things are balanced among all of your teammates. And again, if you don't want to look at everything, if you just want to look at the ones that are assigned to you, you can toggle and just show, look at the month in terms of your own personal tasks. Okay, so over here on the right-hand side, let's go over here. The archive, this is something that's handy as well. So this is an area, we'll go back to the task board here because there's a little bit of a difference. This is an area where we can move completed tasks off our active board. And so what's the difference between completed and archive? Well, these are kind of active. Some of these tasks that were once completed, maybe it was, hey, check out this image that we're using. Maybe that image needs to change or something else has to happen on that task. That task that was once completed may need to change and go back into the in progress based on what that task is and what you want it to do. Archive is a little bit different. Archive's like, okay, we're done. Let's move all these things off. Let's put them in a baker's box. Let's throw them up in the attic. We don't want to throw them away because we may need to access them again at some point, but we want to move them off the active board so that we're not looking at them anymore. So the archive section is a place where we can see all of the tasks that are completed, done, and they're sort of sitting there in storage. And it's helpful to have because you may need to roll back to something or take a look at maybe a dialogue that took place. Like if I look at this one here, maybe the engineering notes that were associated with that particular task. So we're not throwing them out. We're just kind of moving them off that active board, and they're there if we need to come back to them for whatever reason. So that's the idea of the archive. Backlog. So the idea here is maybe there are tasks that are created in this task board here. Maybe there are some to-dos that you've got. Maybe tasks that you've assigned to yourself that need to be backburnered for whatever reason. So in other words, they're tasks you may need to revisit in the future. You can set the status of that task from to-do and progress and completed to backlog. So let's take a look at one here. Maybe this guy for whatever reason, we can change the status of this. So I originally signed this to a team member, but maybe I decide, you know what, I want to backlog this one. So I can choose to put it in the backlog. It's kind of like sticking a pin in it so that you can come back to it at a later time. And when we click close, all of those tasks that you've marked as backlogged will show up here in that list. So you can come back to them and reassign them and reprioritize them as you see fit. Okay, so moving on, we want to talk about projects and builds here. So the projects page is the next area that I want to talk about. And this page is going to display a grid which shows all of the MadCap Flare projects that have been uploaded to my central license. So again, these are copies of our local projects that were once located on the Flare user's desktop. So here's my project list. And here's that webinar 10 project. So I was working on that locally, and now it's showing up here in the project list since we bound it successfully to Central. And now we can see a little bit about these projects. We get a little bit of description about them. We can see what users are associated with this project or what teams are associated with this project. We can customize what we see when we first come to this page. So we can click on this columns option and customize, well, what kinds of data at a glance is important to us. So you can customize this however you want. You can choose, what columns show up here. Let's dig into one of these projects here a little bit. When we click on a project from this list, we're going to come to another dashboard. So much like when we came to that home dashboard, this is another place where we can create and add little widgets that are these little information objects, and they're going to be widgets specific to this project that we've loaded, which is called Demo 21. And that's the one I'm digging into. I'm going to keep this blank because, again, I want to come back to this at the end once we actually do some building and such. But I want to draw your attention over here to the right-hand side, which is this build management area. So let's drill in and talk about what's going on here. This should look familiar. This is actually replicating that targets folder in our Flare project. So everything we've got in that targets folder in our Flare project is going to show up here. So we can do various things here with them. If we're associated with a project and we have the right permissions, then we can build and do some fun things with all of the content that we see here. So for example, we can build right here in Central. I can right-click on this guy and I can kick off another build. And when we do, another row is going to get added to my build list, and he's going to start going. You can also click this button here and kick off a build. So a few different ways to kick that off. You can also schedule a build to happen automatically. So it's really easy to do. There's actually an online schedule if we right-click here, and I'll pull him up. So this build scheduler comes up, and this lets you say, okay, for this particular target, I want you to build, Monday, Tuesday, whatever days you want, at whatever time you want, and this is a 24-hour clock, so maybe I want this to build every night at 1:30, let's say. Let me find my 30, scroll down, and you'll want to choose your time zone, of course, so maybe I'll choose my correct time zone, and I'll click Save and Finish. So now I can manually, go back here, now I can manually kick off this build if I want to, but I've also got this little clock icon here, which means it's also scheduled to build. So you can do it any way you want, but what's nice about this scheduler is you can be completely self-reliant as an author to do this automation. You don't need to have an extra, get an extra build machine set up, buy an extra license of Flare to live on that particular build server. You don't have to have somebody, write a batch file for you if you don't know how to do that to build all of your targets using the command line. You can just use this really easy UI to schedule these builds to happen when you want. So your choice. And again, every time you kick off a build, it's going to add another row here. When a build is complete, we can see a little bit of information about the build, such as how long it took, its status, and there are some other buttons in the toolbar that we want to take a look at. Okay, so let's go ahead and view them here. So let's say we want to build any of these. For example, if we click this little eyeball icon, we can take a look, and it'll actually show us all of those, show us what the build looks like, and we can QA it. We can see what it, do we have any typos? Do we have any grammatical errors? Does it look okay? So this was that project that we built locally, or had local to our machine, uploaded it to Central, and now kicked off that build. All right, so let's go back to Central here. A couple other things we can do. If there's a build that we want to keep, let's say, there's some options. There's this little guy here in the toolbar called Set Build as Keep. So when we do that, what we're going to do, let me just click this Keep button here. Basically what this is it's putting a pin in this particular build. This says, you know what, let's stage this guy. It looks good. Everything looks fine. Let's keep it. Nobody in the world can see this because it's just because it's got a keep icon here, we can't actually see it. When we actually want to set something to live, when we want to make this output available to our customers, there's another option here in the toolbar called Set Build to Live. So maybe this guy here, maybe we also QA'd it, it looked good. I'm going to go ahead and set this to live. And when we do that, we're going to get another icon show up, which is this little globe. Now, this is now available to the general public. And we'll also notice that we're assigned a vanity URL to our output. So now we can use this link and make it available to our customers. So now we're using Central as a hosting option here. If it's kept, nobody can see it. Only users that can log in to Central can see this information. If we set it to live, then people can actually see it. If for whatever reason that live information, maybe we spot something wrong, a grammatical issue, something that we need to fix, if we can log into Central, we can actually remove its live setting real quick. So I'll click OK, and it'll take it from that live to keep. And maybe this one that we know looked good, that we know was fine, we can set that one to keep rather. So with 2 seconds, I was able to switch something that was wrong to something that was right. Our vanity URL actually doesn't change, so nobody's going to get stuck looking at a page that doesn't exist anymore. We just made a quick switch on the server now to take something that was once kept and not live, and then we changed its settings so now that it's available to users. Maybe you've always published your outputs to some other URL like help.myproject.com or help.mycompany.com, but you want to keep using that since that's what your audience knows and loves. That's what everybody's bookmarked, let's say. That's what everybody's used to browsing to. What you can do is you can write a simple redirect script. Again, if you want to use Central for hosting your output live like this, you can create a simple redirect script so that when your users go to that old URL, they'll actually be redirected to the brand new one that's being hosted on Central. And it'll actually repoint to this guy here. So using Central to manage our builds can be really beneficial. Again, it removes the building process from our local machine, so we have the power of the server to make it really quick and neat and tidy. We can easily schedule the build process for targets to happen whenever we want automatically. We don't need to get a build server set up, buy an extra build license if we have to do that. You can be much more self-reliant to do these things on your own. We can also retain builds that we want to keep. And again, this works slightly differently than when you're building in Flare. Every time we build this target in Flare, the previous build gets flushed. So if you forgot to archive it for whatever reason in whatever system you're using, then you've lost it. Here in Central, all of our builds are kept until we decide we want to get rid of them. So if there's one that we like, we can always stick a pin in it by giving it this little checkmark box and setting it to keep, and we can always easily revert back to it if we need to. And if you want, again, use it as a staging area, let's say. You want other non-Flare users who are users in Central to log in and take a look at what you're doing. They can always come in here and take a look at all of those builds that you've kept for QA purposes. There's another guy that I want to touch on here, which is the ability to delete builds. Now, you have to have the right permission to do this. But during the development process, you may end up with a lot of builds here because unlike Flare, these don't get flushed every single time. So what you can do is you can use this guy to delete any builds. So what we can do is delete them if we want to, and that guy should go away. It actually won't take away any builds that you've kept or set to live, just as a sort of a safety measure. It's going to just delete all of those that you've built, maybe you looked at, and that you don't need anymore. But you can choose which ones you want to get rid of. So if you've kept any builds or set any builds to live, you're never going to delete anything that you've stuck a pin in or that's available to your customers. but a good thing to do as you move through the development process, just to kind of clean up and make a little bit of room if you need it. All right, so the repository section here on the right. This is just essentially a read-only view of the content in the source control repository. Not much going on here, but it does let us show, again, you can see these things in Flare, but if you weren't a Flare user, you could come in here and take a look at the history of all the commits here, for example. Here's a read-only view of the file. We can take a look at the history. This is my initial commit. And as this moves through its life cycle, you'll see sort of a stacked list of all the things done on this particular file. So anytime I committed that file to the repository, and if I decided to leave a comment when I pushed it up to Central, because Flare will prompt you when you push, hey, do you want to make a comment about what you did? All of those comments will show up here so that you can see it. All right, so let's make our way back to home here and talk about some of these widgets. So this, again, is where we can customize this initial dashboard that we see when we log in with these little information objects that will hopefully make us a bit more productive. So again, if we want to choose any widgets, we'll click this button, and we'll be able to choose from any of these widgets in this list. Each user can customize it, so everybody's going to have a little bit different idea in terms of what's useful and their work habits, which is why we created them. So for example, I won't have time to add every single widget and go through every single one of them. Our documentation does a great job of explaining them, but let me just go through a few that can be quite helpful. Maybe you're not the only person on your central license. Maybe you're one of 10, 15 users, who knows. And maybe between all of the users on the central license, you've got a lot of projects up there, maybe 30, 40 projects. But as an individual writer, maybe you only care about 5 of those. What you can do is perhaps this project bookmark widget would be useful for you. So you can add it, and he shows up here. And we can move these things around. We can make them as big or as small as we want, or put them where we want on this dashboard. But this is where we can choose to see, well, what projects do I care about most? Maybe I'm only part of these guys here. So instead of going through to the projects page and scrolling through the long list of projects, I can get quick access to the projects that I care about most. So we have a widget for that, and it may be something that you customize. Another helpful widget is storage and usage. Say you were the person who initially subscribed to Central, and you're in charge of handling and passing out the seats and onboarding people, or maybe you need more. Maybe you need to manage all the storage. So you want to know, how many seats have we bought? When is it up for renewal? Do we need to renew it? Do we need to add more? All of that fun stuff. So for you, the storage and usage widget may be helpful. So we can come up here, and I'll click this guy, and at a glance we can see. Move him up here. At a glance, we can see, how many users we've got, what kind of storage are we looking at, are we backing up against something, do we need to add some, do we need to maybe reassign something to somebody else depending on who you're hiring. So you may not look at this all the time, but it's a really helpful thing to see at a glance. So we've got a widget for that too. Another place where widgets can be useful, maybe you're a team lead and you've got 3 writers under you, and you're assigning them tasks often, things that they need to take care of. And you need to keep an eye on not only your own tasks that you've assigned for yourself, but also be sure that everybody else is on track as well. Well, we have a widget for that as well. So we'll go ahead and come up here, and maybe I want to take a look at the task calendar. So I'll go ahead and click Add, and let me scroll down. So here's the task calendar just for myself. Move him over. So now I can see what's going on, just for me. And I'm looking at February, and I can have a list here of my running tasks. But maybe I want to keep track of somebody else. I can click on this here. I may want to duplicate this widget and pull him up. Where did he go? There he is. So maybe, for example, I want to also take a look at somebody else on my team. So I want to add a different user. So I want to make sure that maybe Justin's on track. He's always doing what needs to be done. And we can take a look and make sure that nothing's slipping through the cracks there. So if you want to keep tabs and make sure that everybody's on task and nobody's over-assigned things, it's a nice widget to come to and customize to make sure that not only you're on track, but you can kind of keep an eye on everything else that's going on among your team. So lots of different ways to customize these things. And again, everybody's going to have a different idea of what's useful to them. Okay, so that kind of brings me to the end of this portion of the webinar. I want to take this time too to now bring up that second poll before we kind of jump into the next part. So we talked about a lot of features. We talked about users and teams, the task management and workflow, all the ways we can build projects on Central, stage them, host them, the integrated source control and how easy it is, widgets. So we have another poll that should be in front of you now. So if you would, just take a moment if you want to vote on your most favorite feature of Central. We'd love to get your feedback there. So we'll keep that open for just a moment. And I think while that's going, I'm going to come back over to PowerPoint here. Hopefully this doesn't screw up your view, so you can still see that poll open. Okay, so we're going to transition a little bit over. Let me pull up, and hopefully we've got some questions here. Go back to Mad World here. So, all right. So before we switch over, we've got a lot of questions coming in. I have some help with some questions behind the scenes, but I'm going to kind of take some time and go through some of the questions here. Just a quick reminder. Our Mad World User Conference is coming up in April. We would love to see all of you there. So we have an amazing group of speakers and sessions lined up. It's over April 2nd through the 5th at the Hard Rock Hotel down in San Diego. So San Diego is a lovely place to be all year round, especially in April. So if you're in a very cold part of the world, come thaw out with us in sunny San Diego. We'd love to see you. In addition to all the sessions that we've got open, we also have our hospitality lounge open April 3rd and 4th, which is a room full of all of our tech support. All of our QA is there. So we encourage users to come with their laptops, with their projects, schedule some time, sit with somebody, work through some questions or some best practice issues that you've got with your project specifically. Great place to network with other users and get ideas. But in addition to all the sessions, I want to make mention of the hospitality lounge as well, because many people have said that that's worth the price of admission right there. So we hope to see you at the conference. So let's take a look now and talk about some of these questions that have come in. So let me just pop on over here. Okay, so here's a great question. Will the preview feature work with style sheet updates? The answer is yes. If you invoke that preview window, if you're looking at a topic, let's say, just like I did in the presentation, if we went into our style sheet and made changes, once we click save, we can refresh that preview window, and those stylistic changes we made in our style sheet will show up in the preview window. So hopefully that helps there. Okay. Let me see here. Let me look at some questions that haven't been answered yet. Come down here at the bottom. Give me a moment. Well, it's just over the top of the hour, so we have a little bit of time. Okay, so here's a question I see coming up a lot, so I'll go ahead and address it, which is, what is the cost for Central? So hopefully you all are wondering that too. So we have some introductory pricing going on for Central. It's currently $79 per user per month, and that includes 10 gigs of storage. You can sign up right on our website. In fact, there's a trial available. The first 30 days, when you sign up for your Central subscription, the first 30 days are free. And you can invite any number of users, and you actually have unlimited storage during that trial period. At the end of that 30 days, you can choose to subscribe or not, totally up to you. We hope you would. But the pricing is going to be $79 per user per month, and you can subscribe right through the Central app. You can purchase it and have a recurring, like a monthly charge if you want to. If that's easier for you, put in your credit card and you it's just a monthly billing cycle. Or if you want to purchase 12 months up front, you can do that as well. And if you can't purchase with a credit card, if you have to use a purchase order, depending on how you guys buy things, you can always work with your sales rep and they can help you directly that way. You can also purchase additional storage. So if you need more than the 10 gigs that it comes with for that $79 per month, an additional 10 gigs is available for $20 per month. So hopefully that helps. Okay. So do the users need to have a Flare license, or can they be someone who just needs to review output? So that's a great question. MadCap Central users don't necessarily need to be Flare authors. So the answer is yes. Maybe you've got other folks on your team that have a Central, you've invited them to participate in Central. They're one of the users. You may limit their permissions a bit. You may just want to give them, view access to your builds. So the answer is yes. If you have a non-Flare user on your team, you just want to use it as a staging area for them to check out what you're doing and look at what everything looks like that you've been building. Absolutely. You can invite them to the Central license. They can log in and check out any of your builds and review your output. Okay, so kind of along the lines of the licensing, the question is, you said you have to subscribe to MadCap Central. Do we have to buy a separate license for Central aside from the Flare license? So the answer is yes. Central is it's a separate option to your MadCap Flare license, so it's a completely separate subscription. If you are a Flare user, you don't have to use Central. Of course, we would love for you to try it, but it is an optional subscription that you can add on to your Flare license if you want. Okay, let me keep looking through some of these questions that haven't been answered. Okay, so here's a question. Let's say I want to hire a contractor who already has their own version of Flare. Can I simply get them a license for Central, and then will they easily be able to see all of my projects? Yes. What you would do in Flare is they would need to be able to connect to your Central license and be able to pull any of your projects. So once you sign up for a Central subscription on our website, you may want to invite your client to be a user within your Central license. So perhaps it's you and your client, or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the client subscribes to Central, so they're in there, and then they invite you. So that way all of you can collaborate and you can see what everybody's working on. So the answer is yes. Okay, let's keep looking at some of these great questions that haven't been answered yet. Okay. Is the live URL always a MadCap URL, or can it be something specific for our company? So the way it works now, let me actually go back here to Central and move off the screen. Might as well show the real thing. Let me come in here. So here's the vanity URL that's going to be used, for example, for a particular output. The MC output is always going to be on there. So there are some parts of this vanity URL that you can change, some parts of it you can't. So if I click edit here, there's only certain things I can. I can't just go ahead and make it arbitrary because some of those elements have to be there. It's a great feature suggestion, though. It's one that we've received, so I'll go ahead and add you to that. I think it would be cool to be able to manage and create your own vanity URLs, but part of it you can, part of it you can't. So hopefully that helps there. Okay, let me keep looking at some of these other questions that have been answered. So we talked about cost. That came up a lot. Okay, so there was a question here about the style. Hopefully everybody wants to see this. So could you show me how you created that div.noBreak to group pictures and not have the break? Let me just pop over to Flare quickly. Maybe this will be useful for others. And let me go to my topic here. So what you first have to do is you want to create a style class in your style sheet, so a div style class, for example. So let me open up my style sheet here, and I'll show you what I did. Let me hit edit here. And let me just go to, where's those? It's in the paragraph styles. Well, there he is. Okay, so here's that div. I created a new style class called NoBreak. So let's take a look at the style class. And it's in this style class where we actually set the NoBreak settings. So let me take a look at what I set here. I can't remember if I did this in the advanced or in the simplified view. Let me take a look here. I think this is easier. So if we take a look at this guy, let me look at it here. And if we pull it up, now where did I do that? Because I Can't remember what I did yesterday, so let's take a look. Was it here? Where did I actually do it? Here we go, in breaks. So in the page break, I set it to, well, must be in the wrong, no, I'm in my default. Oh, I know why. Silly me, I forgot to change my medium. Let me look at it here. So I have this set in my print medium, I believe. There we go. So I created a style class, and in my print-based outputs, in my print medium, which is an alternate group of settings for my print outputs, I created I have put the avoid right here inside the page break. So I'm sorry, inside the div I set avoid. So that means anything inside that grouping, avoid breaking. So that's all you have to do. So you create your style class in your style sheet, and then you'll just want to adjust the properties that you in the page break area to avoid. So for that one, I use the simplified view. Some of you may hand code it into your style sheet. Others may use the advanced view. Few different ways to get there and do it. I just happen to use a simplified view to set that property inside the page break. So hopefully that helps. Okay, let's take a look at some other questions here. If we would like to have links from our software go directly to a particular section of the help file, are we able to create bookmark links? Not sure how that would work, or redirect to a custom link. And the answer to the question is yes, you can do this. This would be done using Flare's context-sensitive help feature. So it's often a joint effort between you and your software developer. And you're essentially going to create, you're going to work with the software developer, you're going to assign identifiers to your topics. And when you generate your output, you'll be able to provide all that information to your developer. And they'll be able to make the appropriate hooks from the software application into the help. So even if it's hosted on Central, that's okay. That's just going to serve up all of your output. You would still work with your developer and follow the same context-sensitive help tasks that we've got documented in our help system. And if you've got questions about the specifics and the how-tos, I'm happy to work with you, and we can set up a call and go through that directly. But the documentation's really good about walking through the steps, not only for the author, but also for the developer. But if there's any gaps there in terms of what you're seeing, just reach out to me directly, and we'll help you through it. But the answer is yes, you can link your help to your application, and you can still host it in Central. Okay, so MadCap Central question. Can more than one team member pull down the same project and work on it at the same time? And will changes from the team members overwrite each other's updates? So the answer is yes. More than one team member can pull down the same project. But there is a built-in conflict resolution in Flare when bound to source control. So when you push a change into the repository, if somebody else is working on that file and tries to push their changes into the source control or into MadCap Central source control, Flare is going to prompt them to resolve those conflicts. It's going to say, hey, this file is different on the server. Do you want to go ahead and take a look at the differences? So Flare is going to let you know, hey, this file is different up on the server since you've pushed. Do you want to check out and take a look at the differences? So it's not going to necessarily delete those changes. You'll be able to resolve those things before you go ahead and push to the repository. So hopefully that answers that question. Okay, some more cost questions. So hopefully my answer there was helpful. So does the $79 per month allow me to publish so that my end users can view my help files? Yes. So we're only licensing on the development side. If you're the only user, it's $79 per month. When you turn those builds to live in Central, you get that vanity URL. You can have, a million people hit that URL. It doesn't matter. It's still only $79 per month if you're the only writer. So we don't charge. It's not necessarily who's hitting it and who's viewing it. So hopefully that helps. Okay, a couple more questions here, and we'll go ahead and wrap it up so that you all can get on with your day. Okay, can the storage also be on a company server, not on the MadCap cloud? So at this time, if you're using Central to host your output, it's actually in MadCap Central. It's not on your own company server. However, let me go back to Central here because there's a button I want to talk about. Go back to my projects list, and we'll go in here. Just real quick, I want to go back to those builds that I was doing. So here's those two builds that I did. So this one we're keeping. So this one's sort of back burnered and staged. This one's set to live. Some people, when they're we got a lot of feedback early on that says, this is awesome, this is super easy to use, but in terms of hosting the live stuff, we don't want it on any kind of, we need to have it within our own walls. In that case, you may not use Central to host the output. Again, it's just one aspect of Central. In that case, if there are builds that you want to keep, as long as it doesn't have this little globe section here, nobody can see it unless you're authenticated in Central. So if there's a particular build that works, that's staged, that everybody's QA, everybody says looks awesome, what you can do is you can keep it if you want so that it's always there. There's a button here in the toolbar that says download, and when you click this, a zip file of this build is going to come down to your local machine. It's going to be a handy little zip file. Now you can take that and you can publish that to any internal company web server you want if you've got that set up already. So that's an option too. You don't necessarily have to host it live. You can still keep them and stage them if you want securely, but you may not use this live setting here if you need to put it on your own internal web server to serve up your content to your customers. So that's an option too. Okay, so just going through and seeing a lot of the same questions coming up, so hopefully I've been answering those. That's good. Okay, so additional pricing model for additional storage. I mentioned this in the beginning, so it's an extra $20 per month if you need an additional 10 gigs of storage. Okay, so lots of these here. We have a few more questions coming in. We're sort of running up to the hour here. I'm going to leave this questions panel open for a little bit here. What we're going to do is all of the questions that you all have been typing in, we're going to compile it in a question and answer document, and we'll send it out to all of you. So if I didn't have time to get to them, I apologize, but we'll go ahead and send out all of those questions and answers. You had some great ones coming in. I want to thank all of you for joining me today. This was a long time to be together, so I appreciate you hanging in there and taking time. Again, there's a trial available of Central Online. You will need to have the most current version of Flare installed in order to test it out. So if you don't have Flare 2017, go ahead and get it downloaded. If you're a maintenance customer and your maintenance is current, then you're entitled to receive Flare 2017 free. If you don't have it and you're not sure where to get it, contact us and we'll help you. But get the latest version of Flare installed to take advantage of those new Flare features and also to be able to tinker with your MadCap Central trial. So we'd love to hear your feedback as you continue to use it. Please keep in touch with me. I'll go ahead and let me switch here to my email. So if you want to get a hold of me, here's my email address, jmorse@madcapsoftware.com. Love to hear from you and get your feedback. And if there's features that you see in Central that you think, oh my gosh, it would be amazing if it just did this, send that to me too. We'd love to hear what you guys want to see, because lots of those things get into the future versions of our tools, as you know. So thank you all for coming. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up and look for an email from us shortly with a link to this recording and all of the questions and answers that we talked about today. So thanks very much, everybody. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day and hope to see you again on an upcoming webinar. Thanks so much.